The end of Episode 3 Act 2 is fast approaching, and as we come closer to the finish, the meta has once again shifted seemingly without much agent changes. Several agents have regained the favor of the community, while others have started to feel a little lackluster. All while a power struggle in the Initiator and Controller classes takes place as several agents fight for their position on team comps. What is going on, ProGuides family? It is your host Sergeant Frost, and today we have the patch 3.08 tier list. Let's not waste any more time and hop right into it with the S tier. Living her best life at the top of the S tier this patch, we have Viper. If there's one thing that is guaranteed in the 2021 Valorant meta, it's Viper's dominance as an agent. Not much has changed for Viper in the past several patches apart from a few bug fixes and visual effect changes. This is a good thing obviously, because at this point, people are starting to think that Viper might be a little overtuned with how dominant her kit is. With that being said, she is by no means the perfect pick on every single map, but on the map she does well on, she just has little to no contest. Viper is the post-plant molly queen, and when you have her setups memorized, she provides the best lockdown defense out of any agent in the game. Viper is the queen of the meta for the foreseeable future, and even some pros are starting to say that her ultimate is simply just overtuned. Sova staying in the S tier is starting to feel like an automatic placement, but at this point, his utility in his kit is too essential for winning games in Valorant. Sova is an agent that uniquely provides tons of info, and that doesn't change no matter the elo you're playing in. The only catch for Sova is learning how to play him to the best of your ability. With how many interesting recon and shock dart lineups there are, it's hard to keep track of everything this agent can do. There are Discord servers out there with hundreds of different lineups for all of these arrows for every single map, both on offense and defense. When you spend the time to learn Sova on a deeper level, and by deep I mean spending months learning the intricacies of his kit, Sova will start to feel natural to you, and you will be able to see just how easily your information gathering can carry your team's executes and retakes. Sova is a low skill floor but super high skill ceiling agent, and that is what makes him an easy pick for the S tier. It feels weird seeing Jett not on the top spot of the S tier for a couple patches now. But like my physics professors used to say, what goes up must come down. And that is currently where we are at with Jett right now in the meta. Okay, let's not write Jett off as a bad agent because of a couple untimely nerfs in patch 3.06. Jett is still fine in the meta simply because her dash is still unchanged and functioning as usual. Losing one of her smokes and losing the reliability on her right-click ult hurt her a lot. But it's not the end of the world for Jett. She is still strong where it matters, and that's more than enough for her to be useful on teams. She can still AWP, she can still jump up and carve people up with her left click ultimate, she can still play aggressive, and most importantly, she can still smoke dash on the site. Jett is still a high functioning agent and the best duelist in the game hands down. So if you're trying to pick her up for the rank climb or you want to master any of the other S tier agents, come check us out on ProGuides.com, where our Radiant and Immortal level coaches are available 24/7 to help you reach that next level. Coaching can always improve you, and our coaches are trained to help you improve no matter the level you're currently playing at. So if you're interested, all you gotta do is come visit us with a link in the description. Now let's move on to the A tier. I'm gonna be honest, Skye is at the top of our A tier right now, but it will be interesting to see if she can hold on to that top spot for much longer. There are other agents, both initiators and duelists, who are looking to contest her flash prowess in the meta. Skye before her nerfs was a self-reliant machine of destruction in the meta. She could pop flash around corners and secure multi-kills. She could scout out an entire area by herself with her dog. She even replaced Sage as the main healer in the meta because her heals are just better overall. Skye is the do-it-all agent in the game right now, and she's even challenging duelists for their spot on a team. She received some nerfs to her flashes that make them not as ridiculous to play against, and while it did take her out of the S tier, she is still a great agent to main if you want to dominate your games. Basically, every team could benefit off of a Skye, as long as she's picked as a flex. A big change for the tier list in this patch is Reyna moving up to the second spot of A tier. We know that this does seem far-fetched as Reyna doesn't really provide much utility for a team, but now that players in the Valorant community are overall getting much better at the game, and people understand how to support duelists more, the utility metagame is evolving to the point where entries don't require as much utility for themselves to enter a site. This means that Reyna as a character is becoming stronger and stronger because she enters sites relatively safely and has a much more consistent form of momentum in her kit, which requires kills to activate. This is a big reason why we think Reyna is rising up even more in the meta, and pro teams are even picking Reyna more often now despite her lack of team-oriented utility. Next up in the A tier, we have another huge jump from an agent that was previously in B tier, and that is Astra. It seems like the community is slowly but surely giving Astra back her crown as the Queen of Smokes, as VCT Berlin showed the world that when mastered, Astra is still the best main smoke agent in the game. She has long-lasting smokes, 2 strong CC abilities, and a ton of versatility with her stars. For the longest time, Astra was considered a niche pick considering how her nerfs at the start of episode 3 made everyone think that she was done for as an agent. But as people have become more accustomed to her changes, she has shown that her kit is simply too useful. The only difference now is that you have to be careful with her star placement, and you can't fake control nearly as easily as you used to be able to with her stars. Next up, Killjoy is chilling in mid A tier this patch. She's not the best agent overall in the game, but she definitely feels like it on certain maps. Fracture in particular has become a new map for Killjoy where her presence commands so much respect that teams have to make strategies to deal with her ultimate in freeze time. Her abilities cover a lot of ground when defending bomb sites, which allows her abilities to function like another person. And on offense, she has multiple cheeky spots where she can place her lockdown that can take over a whole bomb site. In fact, much of the reason why Breach is starting to see more use is specifically because on maps like Fracture, Breach is needed to have a chance against Killjoy's ultimate. On other maps, Killjoy is still a great pick and easily deserves a spot on most teams. Sage is falling in A tier, and there's a couple reasons behind this. When the game first started, Sage was an amazing pick because her heals were unique to her kit, and her abilities, while not as impactful as the other Sentinels, still had meta-defining properties. But as the game developed and people have become better at playing against defensive utility, Sage's kit is starting to feel lackluster as a result. Her Sentinel capabilities aren't amazing. Her heal is now sort of outclassed by Skye, and it's becoming harder and harder to get a good Sage res off in any given round. Overall, it seems like Sage's nerfs have finally caught up to her, and she's slipping a bit in the meta. Sage is still a great agent, don't get me wrong, but she's not anywhere close to how useful she felt an episode ago. One agent that is surely on the rise is KO. Skye being hit with a few nerfs a few patches ago, along with KO getting some pretty significant buffs, means that the power rankings in the Initiator class are in conflict more now than ever. Sova is still on top of the Initiators, but now Skye and KO are fighting for the position of primary flasher. In fact, KO's flashes might actually be harder to dodge than Skye's flashes now with the buffs in mind. But we also have to keep in mind that Skye's flashes are easier to use, and KO's flashes require more lineups and precision to use effectively. On top of his flashes being the bread and butter of his kit, suppression is starting to prove effective on maps like Fracture and Split where teams run multiple Sentinels and controllers. Although suppression is still a big experiment for most of the community, there are more and more legitimate reasons for KO to be picked, and I'm personally all for it. Now let's move on to the B tier. One agent that is niche in the duelist class that works well for some players but not for others is Reys. She obviously will never be top duelist ever again after past nerfs to her nade, boombot, and showstopper, but she does do one thing well, and that is create a lot of chaos. She doesn't have flashes or a heal, so competing with Phoenix, Reyna, and Yoru are hard. But like Jett, she does have a lot of mobility, and sometimes flying in quickly is more effective than flashing in when trying to break open a bomb site. On the same note, her boombot and nades command a lot of space and give enemies another annoyance to deal with while your team is running in. Reys is an agent that takes practice, as using her satchels is obviously a skill, but she is definitely worth learning if you want to diversify your duelist agent pool. Unfortunately, the leaked Omen changes that showed up on social media were not true. Well, at least not yet. Those changes did not show up in these patch notes, but hopefully we might see them implemented in the future. With that being said, since Astra's resurgence to the top of the smokes meta, Omen is once again in a weird position where he is being overshadowed by the other controller picks. Basically, on any map you would use Omen, Astra or Viper would simply be better. I don't think there are any maps where Omen is the best controller, and it would be hard to find a reason for Omen to be the best controller with how strong Viper and Astra currently are. But he still brings along a unique set of tools that an experienced player can use to gain an advantage. At the end of the day though, his kit is just not as good as Astra's. Breach is moving up a bit in the tier list this week, and it's mostly because of Fracture. First off, Killjoy is being run a lot on Fracture, and after his abilities got changed to where they can destroy Killjoy's utility, Breach now has priority on this map as a soft Killjoy counter. Secondly, Fracture is a map designed with a lot of tight spaces and corridors, which makes this map prime territory for all of his abilities to shine. It's really hard to run from his fault line and ultimate when you have little warning and very little room to dodge it, especially when it's followed by a flash. Now that players have tested him out more because of Fracture, people are starting to see Breach's strengths on tighter maps. Breach overall is very good at executing on sites and directing aggressive plays, and with how Breach is necessary to fight Killjoy on Fracture, this could become a trend moving forward on maps where Killjoy shines. Cypher has not been at the forefront of the meta for quite some time now, as several defensive-oriented agents have taken priority over him in the meta. But at VCT Berlin, Gambit Nats in particular have shown us why Cypher can work well on maps like Haven and Ascent, because his trapwires and camera provide really strong defensive setups. Cypher is an agent that, like Sova, when you learn the intricacies of his kit and where to set up his utility, he can easily outplay enemies and provide value to your team. But at the same time, his kit isn't amazing by any means, and he's constantly in an arms race within the meta for creating innovative defensive setups to remain viable. Closing out the B tier, we have the lame duck duelist Phoenix. It pains me to say that about one of my favorite duelists in the game, but unfortunately it's true. The other duelists in the game have found little advantages in their kit to edge out Phoenix, and it's hard to justify a duelist who can do everything well but nothing amazingly. Reyna can heal more than him, Reys and Jett have more mobility, and even Yoru has a better flash. The list just keeps going on even further. His kit is balanced, but that also means he doesn't fulfill a specific niche like the other agents can, which makes it hard for him to be picked over the other agents in any situation. With that being said, he is our last pick for the B tier, and hopefully the devs take a look at his kit and at some point help him back into the meta. Now let's close it out with C tier. Alright, gather round everybody, let's say a quick prayer for Brimstone because he needs it. Brimstone is, for lack of a better term, down bad. He just doesn't have redeeming qualities in his kit that justifies you picking him over any other controller at all. His smokes do last longer than everyone else's, but the fact that he only has 3 of them puts him at a disadvantage to every other controller in the game. His ultimate is nice for zone control, but it takes long to wind up and most players are able to dodge it easily. His molly is nice, but the lineups for his molly aren't the same for Viper and Killjoy, and to top that off, Astra is honestly just as good in the post plant as Brimstone is. Brimstone might need a rework in the future if he wants to come back into the meta full time. And honestly, I hope it happens sooner rather than later. Do I even need to explain? We've said this multiple times in a row, but we're still waiting on Yoru's rework. Once he gets his rework, we can reevaluate him as an agent and see where he stands in the meta. But until that day arrives, he is sitting nice and comfy at last place on our tier list once again. An agent that relies on outplays is hard to justify as a good pick in most circumstances, but we do think he has potential given some tweaks to his weaknesses. Hopefully his rework comes up at the end of the episode so we can give him another fair shake as an agent again. And that concludes our patch 3.08 tier list. If you enjoyed this tier list, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to keep up to date with the latest Valorant news, updates, and guides. Also, make sure to check out our website for truly amazing on-demand content on ProGuides.com. This has been your host Sergeant Frost, and I'll see you all again in the next one.